I'm Brett Timmons, and this is Citizens of Fortitude.
You survived the hardest part. All right, so you will notice that we are absent one co-host today.
Yeah.
And Kyle is sad to miss this, but we do have, as she already announced, Brett Timmons here with us, one of our coaches, freak athlete, stone cold killer, and all around awesome person. And of course, we're bringing Brett on because we want you guys to get to know her. And she's a big part of our community, and a special part of what we do here. But also, you know, she's a lifelong mover. And movement has played a big role in her life. I don't know if necessarily anybody that we've been around or spoke to has like kind of as much of a diversity of different movements and modalities like you do. So I'd love to get into that. But first, tell us a little bit more about, you know, how you kind of came into our community, like how you started here at the Fort, just so people know like kind of your entry into Fort life.
Sure. Up until this point, it's kind of a cool story. It's kind of a manifested story. So I feel like my story starts the same as quite a few of our members, which is Kevin Cape bringing me into
right. For those of you who don't remember, Kevin was on our leadership-based podcast last week. Yeah.
Just rewind one YouTube video back, and that's Kevin. So he's been a friend of mine since college. I think we're going on 15, 16 years we've known each other. Also a mover in college, movers together. And I came to New York to visit. And I think like the very first thing I did, I landed at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday. And then it might've been like 7:30 in the morning on a Wednesday. And that, you know, Pacific Standard Time coming from California was early, but I was okay. And at the time it was called the conditioning gym. Mm-hmm. I was already not excited about that.
Right. There's a reason we changed the name.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, are there treadmills? Like, what am I going to have to do in there? Okay, I guess we're doing it. But I trusted Kevin. So came in and I was hooked. You walk in and there's just an energy in this place and you feel really comfortable. And as you said, a lifelong mover. I'm going to put that on my resume. Lifelong mover. I've been to hundreds and hundreds of gyms in different environments and communities. And I loved it. And we came back, I think 2 more times. I was here for a week. Then I came back about a month later, repeated the same process, went to both sides, strength gym, conditioning gym at the time. So Dynamic Classic now. And, I hadn't really had plans to move to New York. It had always been a dream of mine, but honestly, and I think I told you and Kyle this last week, that really set it in motion. That made me feel comfortable about moving across the country and kind of chasing a dream that was just in the back of my head for a long time. And I knew I would have a community here, and I'd never felt better. And I really hadn't even done a program, but I loved the way that it was set up. I loved the way that the training was set up, and I loved the people. Every single person I met made me feel like I could be here and I would be taken care of, in not even just within these 4 walls, but in the city. And I moved not many months later and approached you and said, I want to coach. You said, well, you can be a member. And I said, okay, I guess I'm a member. Right. And then kind of progressed from there.
Yeah, we have a history. It's actually, we've gotten better about it. Yeah. But there was a time in the beginning where, you know, when Kyle and I thought that we were going to like have trainers, because in the beginning it was just Kyle and I that trained all the sessions. But there was a part where, and they were like, all right, if someone trains here a year, maybe we'll consider them being a trainer. Yeah. And that's not a very sustainable way of doing it. And the guy that we actually did hire as our first trainer asked us, and I was like very resistant, but he's super smart about training and like ended up being a great trainer and like a very, and he was already training people like outside. And he was just a friend of ours who would train with us like during our training hours, and he ended up being a great fit. But we were like very protective of who would be on the training staff and stuff like that. So that's still kind of in the background, although I don't think we're thinking like somebody's got to be here for a year before they can train people. But yeah, I think that's definitely true. And then I think we identified you pretty quickly as someone who would be a great coach.
Yeah.
And then you kind of have stepped in and been doing it for a few months now.
Yeah.
Yeah. You enjoying that process?
Yes. I love it. Well, and I think even there's like something that you said in that is, I can see why you would want someone to be here for a year, because it's so much more about people. I mean, yes, you have to be a good trainer. You have to understand movement. You have to understand how to cue and teach and all of those things, but you have to be invested in people, and you have to understand that from the inside out. And I think all of the coaches are here. It's about other people. It's not about them. And that's important to kind of suss that out, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we always talk about like, we arrange the program in a way that makes sense and is intriguing and like actual follows a logical progression. And I kind of always undersell that, because to me, that's just what training is. But I also now, come to realize more and more that that's still kind of unique. Like not a lot of gyms really go through with that. But it is more of that care and getting to know people and having people feel really comfortable here, meeting them where they are, and have them feel a sense of community. Like that's just a big part of it. So I think that was more of our hesitation. Wasn't more like, well, no one knows how to teach the squat unless they've seen me do it for a year. It's more like, is someone, worthy enough to really be a leader in the community?
Sure.
But
it's a big difference.
Yeah. But I think people step up to the challenge. Honestly, I think it's part of the reason why people would want to train with us is because it's a great community, and being a leader of it is exciting and special and something a lot of people aspire to. I mean, certainly it's like what keeps me motivated.
Truly. Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm always excited to see a good squat, but like it's a hard thing to just keep coming back to day to day. Like it's gotta be a little bit more than that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk a little bit more about kind of movement, the power of movement, like the role that movement has played in your life, and what it means kind of outside the gym and the four walls of your training facility.
Sure.
And the reason I wanted to talk to you about this is I kind of alluded to it in the beginning, is that you have like a more of a diverse history of movement than most people that I would say interact with the gym, even most people that I know. So, I mean, and you can fill in the blanks for me here, but I know that you were a collegiate athlete. You played college basketball, so team specific sport. You did somewhat competitive CrossFit for a while, which led you to being a competitive Olympic weightlifter. So I would say kind of the opposite of a team sport, like out there by yourself on a platform with people watching you. You are a certified yoga instructor, and you have a pretty deep practice in yoga. You're a pretty like avid gym goer and have done like a lot of group fitness classes, and that's kind of been a big part of your life. So like, where did this kind of pull towards movement like kind of start for you?
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about riding our bikes at a very young age, like we're just like, we're getting out there, we're going. I was thinking about this. We didn't talk about this ahead of time, but for me, I think where it originated, it was from a young age. I didn't have the best childhood. It was definitely something where, I was like, what can I do to really escape? What can I do to be involved in something and feel a sense of community and feel like I belong, right? That I belong, that, have a family, let's say, like, we're on team sports, have a family. So I just tried to join every team. I tried to play every sport. I would find people in the park and just ask them if, I could play too. So I think even starting from a young age, I was like on the all boys baseball team, because I was like, I'm going to do it. I don't know. Let's do this. I want to try it out. And it kind of whittled down into basketball. In high school, I did track and field and tried my hand at that, and just ended up excelling in basketball. So did that collegiately, Long Beach State, and was just so committed. I didn't have a scholarship in the beginning, but I was so committed to just like making my own way, so making my own way. And at that time, maybe did feel a little bit like an escape from my real life or whatever that looked like. So I walked on and earned my way, ended up getting a scholarship my second year through graduating. And after that, once you graduate and you have that kind of regimented thing that you're doing, and you're with a team and you're moving in that way and competing, and you have a purpose, a sense of purpose, a sense of community. When you graduate, they don't really tell you what to do with your hands after that.
Yeah.
You're just in the world all of a sudden. You have a job and you have no idea what it looks like to be, to kind of have that quote unquote taken away from you, or you exit that. So I think it's a story with a lot of competitive athletes that they enter into something like CrossFit or a gym community that feels a little bit like that, like a team. So I jumped into that and just sort of tried everything I had done. I had never done, snatches, clean and jerks, worked with kettlebells, worked with barbells, dumbbells, all of that. I mean, I did for what they told us in weightlifting in college, obviously, but I'd never done it like that. So joined that. And then I was in a pretty bad car accident, and it really slowed things down for me. And we were kind of talking about this, that my training had been a little bit chaotic. Like I was searching for something. I was trying to fill sort of a gap. So I was like, I don't care, whatever it is. It was almost like digesting anything I could get my hands on when it came to movement. And I had a disc replaced in my cervical spine. So between L405 or C67, not L, C67. And I wasn't allowed to do anything overhead. I wasn't allowed to do anything weight bearing with my upper body. So I strapped on a weight belt and I put a kettlebell in between my legs and just squat in between boxes. So what did you call it earlier?
Oh yeah, belt squat.
Belt squats. Yeah. And I did that for months because I couldn't do anything. And I think that's where I really started to figure out that movement isn't about the numbers. It's not about the accomplishment. It's not about anything other than I needed to be connected to my body and how I move in the world. And it was focused and it became intentional and it became, something that I could do to reset and understand who I am as a person, as a leader, as a friend, as a, sister, everything. And movement became that for me. So as I progressed, and you said Olympic weightlifting isn't really a team sport, and immediately I thought about my coaches and my teammate. It was a team sport. Yeah, this, right? Like you are alone, but I did it with these other people. Yeah. And I mean, that was part of it. Like I never did anything alone. You just feel like you have this family. And then I really got into yoga, and that for me is completely about mindfulness. It's about, how I strategically move my body, how I strategically breathe, how I reset my mental state. And it's something I tell my students, and I tell people in here, and I tell people in my life that I have access to these tools to show up as a better human being because I'm strategic with how I move. And we know all of that is integrated inside these four walls and outside these four walls. And I think has given me, we were talking about coping mechanisms earlier, it's given me this ability to restart. If something like shakes me, I can kind of slow down and understand and see things differently. And so I think I didn't really understand what movement had done for me up until that point. And then it all kind of came into alignment where it's always really it's really saved me in the world. It's really created the person I want to present to the world. And even more so, we talked about moving into a leader of those communities. My favorite part about it, like this isn't about me. It's not about my name on the board. It's not about my numbers. Sometimes I don't even know what those are. It's about, I get to witness others doing the same thing. I get to witness others show up and understand themselves better. How are you in the face of adversity? How, when you go through the line, or do you stop short, or during the thaw, how do you finish? How do you get through that mental fatigue, that physical fatigue? Where are you? How can you breathe? Like you witness all this beautiful thing come together, and that might sound kind of funny or kind of silly, but you get to witness that as a leader in these communities. And it's just it's why I want to do this for my life, for my purpose, is it has saved me in that way. And I think it's amazing to witness that here.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's interesting is, and this is like kind of a new concept that I'm wrestling with, but like if you look at your kind of history with it, like obviously as a kid, you were just looking for some belonging or connection, but then you kind of fell into the real kind of performance-based stuff. Like, basketball obviously is a competition, and your performance your scholarship relies on your performance. And then you get into something like CrossFit, which is competitive exercise.
Yeah.
And then weightlifting is very much judged by how much weight is on the bar on successful lifts. But then I like that there was kind of this shift to what I call being like dispassionately or passionately dispassionate about the results, right? Like it's no longer about the numbers on the wall. Like you track that and you have an eye on it because you want to have good training that is purposeful, but it no longer becomes the key to the whole thing. The key to the whole thing is the experience, how you feel in your body, and how you move and how you perform and how you execute. And I think yoga, which is not a modality that I'm particularly familiar with, but that's one of the things that's captivating about that to me is, it's a practice, right? Everybody says you practice yoga. You don't compete in yoga. You don't, maybe somebody says you do yoga, but really mostly you practice yoga. And that's kind of what I love about it. And that's a little bit about how I'm kind of framing my training now as more of like a daily practice. And I'm not too worried about PRs and things like that anymore. So I just find that interesting. And I think people have to go through that. When most people come to us, they're trying to find a way of, they've never measured anything. Like their training is not data driven or purpose driven at all. Right. So we're trying to push them in that direction. Like these things are important. Like keep track of your weights, keep track of your numbers. Show yourself that you're making progress. Like that is a way of proving that the training works and that you're getting somewhere. And then you just try to, in the right amount of time, get them to that next level of like, well, the numbers don't really matter anymore. Like, can you show up and keep doing this and just make this a little bit of part of who you are? So talk to me a little bit more about like the yoga practice and how that kind of serves that purpose of just having like this daily practice that's just very kind of internal and movement driven and not so much accomplishment driven.
Yeah, I think if, we take it back before that shift and obviously it's never perfect. I definitely still look at the board. Like I say, I don't always care what's up there. I'm like, just did it today. I was like, we're doing, look at that. Like, we killed it. I think when you were saying that, I think the biggest mindset shift is, I was in it to win it against others. I was competitive. I wanted to beat others, right? Like I wanted to be the best Olympic weightlifter. I wanted to lift the most weight. And I think that's like the kind of the chaotic part I'm talking about, where my mindset was never inwards. I wasn't really focused on how I felt during it, as long as I pushed it the furthest, moved the fastest. And having that shift, and I can really give a lot of credit to yoga and also just, it takes a lot of external work too, where I have to look inwards and I have to really think to myself, okay, this is for me. This is for my mental reset. This is being in the community. And I think I actually thought of a good example as you were talking too. And when I witnessed things like this, there was a client, they were going through a thaw and I was over here coaching and I was watching them. And there's a group of 4 that come together all the time, as like some people do, they have their time slots. And the client got off the bike and was done with the thaw, but there was still one of her team member or teammates during the time was still going. And the passion that she had cheering on this person to keep going further, this genuine joy of just clapping and like yelling for them, like that's the shift, like you start to be that person where you are inward focused, you're doing this for yourself. However, that allows you to be that person in the community. And I think without removing myself, some people this works for, but myself from that constant competitive mindset with others, I wasn't able to show up for others in that way. And you can witness it and see like that person has shifted. They are self-focused. They do, they are seeing that the program works. They are experiencing failures and success, and they're seeing gains or whatever it is that you want to call it. But that feeling when you can genuinely be there for someone else because your training was for you to excel as a human being, and that leaves room and space and energy to lift others up. And I think so many of us, and I'll speak for in here, shift to that mindset that's what works. right? You find places like that works. And
well, it's kind of like, that's the nice like paradox of this, right? Is that you kind of come to it usually for yourself. Then you find community, and, you know, doing it for others becomes super valuable. And, you know, we know that we'll push harder when we're pushing for someone else rather than ourselves. And then ultimately that leads to us getting the best personal result. You know, so it kind of works its way around, that really when you're doing things for others is when you're kind of maximizing your own capabilities.
For sure.
That's why we throw partner conditioning workouts in there, because everybody knows that when that happens, they're like, oh gosh, now I have to train hard because someone else's result is being affected by my effort and my output. And that's kind of part of the reasons we put them. Plus it's fun. You know, it's fun. It's fun to do it with others and be part of it and be invested with someone else.
And I think it's, you know, it is that duality, that paradox of, you know, and I think this is part of the yoga practice, is that I have to have enough energy to be able to produce that for someone else. And I think that's a big distinguisher of, did you actually go inwards, do this for yourself, really like that movement and connection with your body and how you move in the world. Because I mean, think about how much energy you expend constantly being outward focused. And I think that's what my chaotic competitiveness, I'll call it, I'll label it, is I was always focused on what others thought of my numbers, or what I was doing, or was I good enough, or would I make it to the games, or would I go to the Olympic trial? It was never going to happen with Olympic lifting. You know how hard that is, but I was trying my hardest. And I just was never like filling up. I was never getting the personal fulfillment that I needed, because I was always worried about outward focus. I was always worried about what other people thought about my numbers. So none of that changes. Like, you do want to do better all the time, but it's that mindset of, I'm doing this for me because I want to feel like I can be there genuinely, like we just said, for someone else. But I think that is like a huge, like, it's kind of, I mean, it is a paradox. Am I using the right word when I say that?
I think so.
It is. I think we'll say. Let's look it up later. But it's just like, okay, you're doing it for yourself, and that's selfless. And that's kind of what yoga taught me, where I'm on that mat alone with a bunch of different other people. Hopefully I love that energy, but I'm here so I can be fulfilled, so I can be a whole human being. And then I can really experience others and be there for others and cheer for others, like this client was. And I'm fascinated by that. I'm fascinated by the human experience in that way, and witnessing people who can shift that for themselves. And I think movement, to kind of tie that up, has taught me that. It's completely taught me that lesson.
It's very uplifting when you see that happen in real time. And
you're
it's
like,
really great.
This is what it's
like,
about.
it's doing it. We're doing it. This might be a good segue then into discussing, like, so I think we've kind of figured out how the practice of movement and kind of your experience with it has led to a shift in what you are aiming to accomplish while you do it, and kind of what makes it satisfying to you, or what's a really good outcome for you. How about like those lessons that you learn in here, taking them outside the four walls in the gym? Like, how does that experience kind of permeate the rest of your life?
How doesn't it permeate the rest of my life? You know, I think you hear a lot of people talk about how they just felt better when they moved, right? Or, you know, if you do it, some people are first thing in the morning, some people are in the evening, depending on, are they trying to get motivated for the day, or are they trying to decompress from a day? What works for that individual person? But I think for me, it is kind of that mindfulness, right? You know, like if I focus on how I'm moving my body, how I'm breathing with the community, there's more patience in my day-to-day. There's more kindness in my day-to-day. There's more understanding, compassion, empathy, all the things that, you know, I think human nature, humankind needs a little bit more of. So, I mean, you hear some people that are like, this is a non-negotiable for me. Moving my body is a non-negotiable. There's a reason for that. Maybe they haven't named that yet, but in my experience, it just helps me live the way that I want to live with people that I want to impact, or I want to be a leader for. And without those types of movements, and I think everything from breathing to moving to energy to all of that, you just notice, I just notice a difference. I notice that I can't really hold the space like we were just talking about for others. I can't show up in a whole way without resetting in that way. So it's just, I don't know. I just am convinced that if everyone just moved a little bit, we live in a better place.
Well, I mean, everything, starts with the body, right?
Yeah.
I always tell Kyle, this is like we're doing the most important job there is.
Yeah.
Which I realize sounds grandiose and has a lot of hubris behind it. But in some ways, like so much of what you experience, whether consciously or unconsciously, just starts with your body.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot control much if your body is out of control.
Right.
And I think we're kind of teaching people how to control their bodies, how to have a connection with it.
Yeah.
And I just think that impacts so much of your life, from your mental health to your relationships to everything else. And then the thing I always find is, I think my connection to it is a little bit more straightforward in that, the gym just proves to me that I can do hard things and I can be courageous when I need to be.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is not so easy for me, outside the gym. So I really do rely on that being like, it's just a real kind of straightforward way to see you can survive difficulties in the
adversity.
In the most plain, straightforward ways possible.
Yeah.
And ideally when the adversity is more complicated or is more emotional or is more difficult, you have some tools to deal with them.
Yeah. And I think we were just talking about that, 15% failure, 85% success. I mean, you can't understand, I've said this before, you can't understand what sunlight is if you didn't have darkness, right? How are you in the face of adversity? How are you when you're quote unquote suffering, or your body's under stress, your mind is under stress, all of that is under stress? How do you rebound? This is the tactical way or kinesthetic way, in my opinion, to learn how to have coping skills. It's all part of it. We could maybe talk to a therapist 5 days a week. I'm an advocate, definitely do something like that. Definitely do your breath work. But this is our kinesthetic way to be like, okay, this was hard. There's hard things outside of this gym. There's definitely going to be stressors outside of this gym. You're definitely going to have to do something that you have no control over or you didn't expect. And I kind of joke about that I never look at the thaw ahead of time, because I'm just like, I don't want to plan for it. I just want something. I want to be able to do something hard that I didn't plan for, because it's every day, right? We do hard things that we don't plan for every day. You don't always have control. I mean, I said we actually never have control. We don't have control over some of the things that we're going to have to deal with. And that's the transition between the two. I don't think you can have one without the other and do it successfully, like you were just saying,
Yeah, for sure. All right. So next movement challenge for you.
I can't even talk about it.
Yeah. We're gonna talk about it for a minute.
Yeah.
So you're starting to train for a triathlon. Yeah. What prompted that decision?
I don't know.
Courage.
Yeah. Courage. I'm sure courage and some friends who kind of talked me into it. I'm such an enthusiast with this shit. It's like the high rocks. Everyone's like, whoa. And I'm like, I'm just like, I'm in
just going along for the ride.
I'm just going along. We'll see what happens. So yeah, I guess, we sink when we try and swim. I just sink.
Yeah, same. I'm not buoyant.
No, I just right to the bottom. Yeah. So that'll be interesting. And I'm doing it in Alaska.
All right.
So might as well go hard or go home.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jones, we're just going to go jaunt through Denali Park and just see what happens.
Yeah.
I don't even have a bike yet. Yeah.
Seems like you're prepared.
Super prepared.
Yeah. Just go to the most rugged wilderness that we have in the United States.
And just do it. Run.
And just do it. I love it.
And bike. Yeah. And swim.
I love that about it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll keep tuned to
how that all goes. I'll let you know how it goes. Hopefully I get in a pool from now till then. I have 8 weeks, so we'll see how it goes.
Well, after it, maybe we'll come back and do a little bit of a recap of how you did and how it was. And how
I'm ready.
Awesome. All right. I think that's a good place to wrap up.
Perfect.
All right. This is Brett. I'm Dan from the Fort, where we take this seriously and we do what works, and we'll see you next time.